Hello and welcome to Straight Talk with Arun Kumar. Today's topic is about the upcoming U.S. elections, which everybody is excited about. And my guest in the show today is Tricia Flanagan, who is a U.S. Republican candidate for the state of New Jersey. Hello, Tricia.
Hello, Arun.
How are you?
Good, thanks. Thank you for having me.
How's your day so far?
It's great.
Yeah?
Better now that I'm talking to you.
No, thank you. You just made my day. So, how's the campaign going, and are people excited? And
Yeah, I think so. I think the energy is incredible. It's palpable because, I mean, let's face it. You mentioned the primaries coming up in June, but then we go on to the general election.
June 2nd, is it?
June 2nd, yep, June 2nd, and then we go on to the general election where I'm going to take on Cory Booker, and there's a lot that we've got to fix that he broke. So, this is really an exciting time to be a Republican.
Just half a battle. Until June 2nd, and just half the battle.
That's right. But then we're full battle speed to November.
Yeah. So, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself. How did you get into politics?
Sure, I know. I'm sort of the unexpected politician in a lot of ways.
So is Mr. President.
Right, and that's going very well, and so we want to replicate that process, right? So, I'm a mom of three, first and foremost. I come from the private sector. I started my career as a biochemist in oncology, and then I went on to work in corporate America. I started my own consultancy, but I've been suffering from the Murphy tax assault and from what I call the liberal trifecta that we're seeing with skyrocketing taxes, with diminished economic return, and I have a full 5-point plan that leverages my experience in all of these different sectors to make sure that New Jersey leads the way to be not only the next economic engine and technology corridor of the country, but where America can lead the way to healthcare innovation, fixing what's broken with our healthcare system in the U.S. Senate, and that's where I landed, why I'm running.
So do you have a political background? You come from a political family, or?
No, I come from a military family, and I know you being in the military, thank you for your service.
Thanks for support.
My father served his career in the U.S. Navy. My grandfather served in World War I, and I was taught that there's nothing more important that you can do with your life than serve your country. I didn't feel called to the military, but I feel that we have to have that military mind of service first. It's never been needed more than now in our political system. So, I'm ready to do that.
So why Senate, not the House?
That's a great question. I think that how we kind of got the political establishment swamp is career politicians that were just looking for a box to check, run for any office. What I really believe is that my talent and my skill is the best fit for what has to be accomplished in the United States Senate. 2020 is a critical election. We need an empowered Congress to fully implement America's agenda, and I feel that my background, my experience, my passion is the best fit for that U.S. Senate seat.
So if I'm not wrong, you ran for office in 2018, about 2 years ago?
I did. I ran as an independent Republican. I have been a Republican all my life. My family goes back to the party of Lincoln, I think. But I felt that in New Jersey, Republican roots were being diluted, and I felt that there wasn't a true conservative constitutional voice in that election. I had 4 months to run. I got in it really to anchor our conservative values in New Jersey, and now, now that 2020 is upon us, I think that now is the time to really take my political step in the next direction.
Talking about vocabulary, you mentioned independent Republican. That brings up a good point. Lately, I keep hearing this phrase, a Trump Republican or not a Trump Republican. What is that?
Yeah, and I think...
We never had a Lincoln Republican and non-Lincoln or a Bush Republican. What is this Trump Republican?
Right, well, we've had neoconservatives, we've had progressives and liberals on the other side. So I think that now is the time, especially with President Trump kind of not having, having been in both parties, I think that the time was ripe in 2016 for some of these different groups to really kind of identify in a new way. I think at the end of the day, the Republican Party still stands for true conservative values, for constitutional foundations, and the principles that I think are going to lead the country forward. So I think a Republican is more about your platform than just having an R next to your name. And a Trump Republican, I think we're all in one big family, to tell you the truth.
Okay. If I'm not wrong, I heard we had some problems filing for an FAC paperwork. Is that right?
No.
No. Okay.
Not that I know of.
I heard some news that you had some problem in Michigan when you're filing. You had some problems with the Federal Election Commission or something, no?
No, that sounds like maybe a rumor. I mean, I'm glad to dispel any myths.
Yeah,
or rumors
that's what I
there.
heard, and that's what
Yeah,
was
yeah,
in the media, so I'm not sure if I...
Far as I know, everything is full steam ahead. I did have to refile because I had run in the prior election.
Okay, maybe.
I simply had to file a
File
new
again?
committee.
Okay.
Yeah, a new committee filing, but everything I know is full steam ahead. I'll let you know if that changes.
Are you from the state of New Jersey originally, or?
So originally I'm from Massachusetts.
Oh, not too far.
Yeah, but I've been in New Jersey now longer than I was ever in Massachusetts, so I'm a Jersey girl through and through.
So let's since you're running for Senate for the state of Jersey, let's focus on New Jersey initially.
Sure.
So what are some issues or challenges you've seen so far in your campaign? What are people focusing on? What change are they expecting?
Yeah, that's what really matters, right? It's really what is going to benefit the people of New Jersey. And I spend the majority of my time out talking to the voters. I'll tell you a great story, in fact, how energized the voters are. I was campaigning in Ocean County, and we were going stop to stop and walking through some neighborhoods, and there was actually someone that got in their car and chased us down and said, I just heard from one of my neighbors that there is a constitutional conservative running. Is that true? And you support President Trump? I said, yes, it is. We talked. And that kind of energy, the reason that I underscore that is in recent elections, even going back to the gubernatorial election we had last, there has been an enthusiasm gap. We have been a blue state by voter turnout, not by voter demographics. I run hardcore analytics, and I can walk you through the numbers that New Jersey is a conservative state. Even Gallup proved that recently. Well, then why are we so irretrievably blue?
Oh, that's such an oxymoron.
New
Jersey conservative.
You know what? But dang if it's not true. Even Gallup, the numbers prove it. So when you look at why we've had some predominantly Democrat wins, it's because of that enthusiasm gap. It's again been by voter turnout, not by voter demographics. When you have a candidate who will energize the electorate and not only get up off the couch and vote themselves, but bring their friends and their neighbors, that's how we're going to really win this election, in my opinion, and the numbers bear that out. We have 2.4 million registered unaffiliated conservatives that are ready to rock this 2020 election. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm hearing on the ground. And the issues that they want to have addressed, they want health care addressed. They want something affordable. My plan decreases premiums by a half to a third, increases access to quality care and innovative treatment. Those are two different things.
Yeah, we'll talk about
We'll talk more about that, but that's what I'm hearing. Those are the issues that they want addressed.
So as you know, New Jersey is the state with the highest property taxes in the nation. So what are some thoughts or ideas on affordability in the state of New Jersey?
Right, so that is a big issue that really resides with Governor Murphy. He's responsible for that. We can't replace Governor Murphy until 2021, but what we can do in 2020 is we can make sure that we send a U.S. Senator to that seat who can get more out of our dollars. What do I mean by that? New Jersey doesn't get much back versus what they put in. And when you have a U.S. Senator that really has their heart to our state, what I can do is I can leverage those dollars that we send to Washington and get more back. So we're really getting an increased power from a dollar. Governor Murphy is spending more than is being taken in, and what we have to do to fix that is certainly fix the Trenton issue, but before we can do that in 2021, we have an answer. We can leverage power at the federal level that we haven't done before, and I'm ready to put that solution to the task.
Talking about bringing money from the federal level to the state, I'm going to switch topic here about the Gateway Tunnel project, right? So I heard that the federal bodies are not very cooperative when it comes to the Gateway Tunnel project and assigning funds to the project. Is that true?
Well, I think
the reason why I asked, sorry to interrupt. The reason why I asked this question is because you said you would bring money from federal to the state of New Jersey, and what I hear from people is otherwise.
Right. Well, see, here's the issue. I don't know that anybody's actively working against it and has their heart against it. What I'm saying is that the issue resides in someone bringing it to the table and lobbying for those dollars. I mean, let's not forget that we need a change agent in that position, and we haven't had one with Cory Booker. He is not fighting for those dollars. So I think what you're asking about, are they not open to opening up the purse strings? Well, has anyone asked the question? Has anyone made the argument? Has anyone fought as hard as possible? And my answer is no. When I look at Cory Booker's record, that can change in 2020, and there are a lot of innovative ways we can look at the budget to not just get more back, but to make the dollars that we have more effective and get more out of them.
I think I disagree with that, because what I heard is, if I'm not wrong, I think the project estimate for the Gateway Tunnel project is about $13 to $14 billion, and so far the federal funding is only about $700 million. So what the Democrats have been complaining is they are not getting enough support from the federal authorities.
Right, but see, again, they're asking the question of the federal authorities. What I want to bring to the table is there are a lot of private sector dollars that we can leverage. We can almost get 2 for 1. When you look at the infrastructure and those that stand to benefit from it, there are a lot of private industries that stand to benefit from that. Why should that burden reside solely on the taxpayers and the dollars that we can get back from the federal government? We should be able to lobby those that benefit from it to chip in.
Tunnel, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we have to look at it in a comprehensive way and not keep going back to the same old solutions that really haven't been solutions. They've really been more part of the problem.
How would you work differently with the federal agencies to get the money to state of New Jersey? How would Tricia be different from other folks? Well,
I've already begun reaching out to what I'm calling a Tri-State Commerce Commission, and again, this is leveraging the private sector. So when we almost can get 2 to 3 to 1 dollar for dollar. So when we have, again, the private sector businesses that should be ponying up, they should be part of this equation. When they put their dollars into that solution, then what we can do is we can always lobby for more from the federal government. But if there's still a gap in what we need, I don't think it has to reside squarely on the taxpayers. I think we can work out a deal. That's something that I bring in my 25 years experience being a change agent in the private sector, much like President Trump, the deal maker. I won't claim to be as good as him, but I have a very good track record of getting more and optimizing a budget so that we can make sure that everything squares and bringing in new ideas to the equation to make up for the difference in the shortfall.
Talking about Trump factor, simultaneous presidential elections with the senatorial elections, do you think would that work in your favor or against?
For having President Trump?
The presidential elections in the same year as the senator elections.
I think it's going to be a big benefit, and the reason I say that is when you talk about turnout, I talked about those numbers, kind of the balance of unaffiliated registered conservatives, the largest segment of voters in New Jersey, and then we bring in the 1.2 million registered Republicans to the 2.1 million registered Democrats. We see that now that we have 3.6 million and we're the majority, and what I think is that enthusiasm gap that I mentioned before, we need to increase our turnout by about 5 to 8%, and that's the win. And so having President Trump in the mix, having a big 2020 presidential year, I think that that's going to serve to energize the voters even more, and turnout will be in our favor.
What do you think is the mood of public? Are they liking Trump, or with all the impeachment, all the drama going on?
Well, when you look at the polls, I mean, President Trump nationwide has hit some records. He's at 51% approval nationwide. He's at 96% approval of the Republican Party. In New Jersey, the most recent polls I've seen is about 36, 37%. But the big unknown factor, again, is that unaffiliated conservative voter that's hard to reach by polls. That was a big swing factor in this last off-year election. Let's bring that into the mix. That's the first fruit that we're seeing of this Republican resurgence. Even Politico had as a headline that of all the off-year elections in the country, New Jersey staved off the blue wave. Unexpected, and it was the constitutional conservatives that had the win. So I think that all of those pieces of information together speak to the fact that the Republican resurgence is here, and 2020 is going to be, I think it's going to be our year to break the blue wall.
Initially, you mentioned about Mr. Booker. Let's get back to Mr. Booker and Mr. Menendez. What do you think? What's your take on them?
Well, I think I'll start with Mr. Booker first because I intend to be his opponent. I think that Cory Booker has turned his heart and his back on the state of New Jersey. I mean, when you look at what I've been calling his vanity presidential campaign, that's now over. But you know, he left New Jersey and didn't look back. I mean, he's according to every measure, he's missed the most votes of any sitting senator. We know about the Newark water crisis. That goes all the way back to 2013. He's been running away from New Jersey and running away from the culpability of the problems that he's created for a long time. I'm firmly standing ready to meet him when he returns to our state, when he decides he wants to look back in this direction. He's got to explain his record, and I think that's a prime opportunity for me to point out where we have gone wrong and how my solutions are the real answers.
If I were to ask you, what are the two things you would undo what Booker did, what would those be?
Well, that presumes he did anything. He had to have done something to undo it, and I really think that he hasn't. He's starting at less than zero. I mean, I would make up for the poor souls in Newark and beyond who have lead in their water. His own base in Newark, there was a documentary, a film documentarian that talked to his base, and a beautiful woman sitting on her porch. She had voted for him, and she said, in her own words, she said, "Cory Booker is not good." And that says it all, doesn't it? So what I would undo is the hurt that he has caused to those constituents, and what I would do better is I'd solve the problems that he has neglected for far too long.
Okay. So what about Mr. Menendez?
So Mr. Menendez, you know, he was federally indicted, and yet he still won. He's going to be up in 2024, and I think that he's going to be easily beatable as long as we tee up a constitutional conservative in that year as well. Mr. Menendez, he stands for everything that's wrong in Congress. He has just turned he's become corrupt, and he stands for the swamp. And New Jersey deserves better. New Jersey can do better, and New Jersey will do better when we finally realize that politicians like Menendez and Booker have just got to go.
Talking about New Jersey, what's your take on the so-called sanctuary cities and getting licenses to undocumented folks? What's your take on that?
I am firmly against New Jersey becoming a sanctuary state. Tragically, we have examples in our country of where this is already occurring and how deleterious the effects have been. We have not only an illegal aspect of it. If you cannot provide documentation that you are a citizen of this country, I don't understand how lawfully any documentation can be given. That's something I'm firmly against, and I plan to work on federal measures that can push back on this liberal assault that's happening in New Jersey. We have federal provisions. We need a U.S. Senator who understands that and is strong enough to fight at that level for it.
What's your take on spending versus tax cuts? What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I am for nothing has ever, Reagan said nothing ever came a good of big government. I am firmly for more tax cuts, but I'm also for getting the lifeblood in New Jersey's economy flowing again to make sure that we take full advantage of the tax cuts that are going to fuel business growth in New Jersey. Governor Murphy is sending big and small business away from our state. I want to attract those businesses back. Again, I mentioned my Tri-State Commerce Commission. I want a living economy that is going to let New Jersey lead the way in the industries I mentioned, like the next technology corridor. We can leverage our budding oil refinery business. There are blue collar and white collar jobs that are ready to thrive if we lower taxes again, if we have the fix at the New Jersey state level, and if we leverage those additional tax dollars that I mentioned. I think that we can have New Jersey lead the way for those solutions.
You're talking about oil companies. What's your take on the, do you believe global warming is a reality?
So look, I have some science credentials of my own, being a former biochemist. I'm not a climatologist or a meteorologist, but I think when you look at the track of, in recorded history, there have been these same ebbs and flows of temperature and warming and cooling and weather patterns. But don't listen to me. Listen to some of the finest climatologists that are standing up now and saying that, you know what, this has happened before, it will happen again. This is a natural flow of our climate, and it's not that the world is ending. The sky is not falling.
So you don't take that seriously?
Look, it's not that I take science seriously.
All the Paris Agreement and the CO2 emissions and.
Look, when you track CO2 emissions versus temperature, again, you see the same pattern that we've seen for as long as we've had recorded history. I think that having an alarmist approach to anything is never a good or sound idea. And before we throw trillions of dollars, and it is trillions of dollars, behind any of these new green concepts, we better make sure that the science is valid. And all of the experts all across the world, some are saying the sky's falling and the world is imploding, but the rational scientists and those who really have studied the history are saying otherwise. I'm saying let's be wise and look at all the data before we make trillion-dollar decisions.
I'm not sure who's rational or irrational because I'm not a scientist myself, but scientists say that the United States is the second country with the most carbon emissions. They've been saying that consistently. So is that not rational enough for you? Or?
Well, what are the endpoints to that? What are the consequences? What are the sequelae to that? When we look at China, when we look at other countries that have far more emissions than we do, it makes sense to look at what's happening there.
There's only one country which has far more emissions than us, which is China. That's it.
Right. But then why does the burden fall exclusively on the United States? And when you say scientists say, well, I'd like to look at that litany of names, because there are scientists that say one thing, that what you're saying, but there are plenty of scientists that say that that's not true. And let's look at somebody like Al Gore, who's neither a scientist nor a climatologist nor a meteorologist, unless he's gotten some new degree we haven't heard about. And he said that the world was going to end in 2014, basically. The ice caps were melting, and that these horrific weather patterns were going to occur. Well, let's look at the real data. When we look at Antarctica, for instance, the ice is actually thickening. It's actually going in the opposite direction. What
about the Arctic ice? The Arctic is melting.
But not to the degree that was predicted. And again, it's balanced out by the other ice that's thickening. The other pole that's thickening. So as a former scientist now, I've not been a working biochemist for a couple of decades, but the mindset is still there, and I like to make objective decisions based on data. And the data that I've seen, and I'm listening to the climatologists that really seem to understand this far better than I do, and they're not panicking. If they do, we look at it a different way. But again, I pivot back to why spend trillions and trillions of dollars on a problem that hasn't been definitively set out, and on solutions that have not been proven to have any effect.
So are you in favor of solar, wind, and other clean technologies, or no?
I think we have to look at it all in its own package and its own benefit. So, who doesn't want
it's a clean technology, that's a benefit.
Who doesn't want clean technology? But what is the cost? What is the benefit? Where will it work? And how effectively will it work? I don't think these questions can be asked or answered in a vacuum. I think they have to be looked at in a sound, rational way. And all for good solutions, clean solutions. But let's look at all of the ways that they're going to impact our lives.
Yeah, the reason we ask this question is this probably is one of the several bone of contention between tensions between liberals and conservatives,
yes.
Which is why I asked this question.
Yes.
So I'm assuming you are. Let's not assume. What's your take on taxes on applying a carbon tax?
Well, again, okay, so let's
look at providing incentives to companies who follow clean technologies or anything like that.
So let's look at New York, where that is starting to take hold. What is happening and who's benefiting? So those property owners that can afford that are doing that, what they're doing is they're raising rent. So if it's a residential capacity, what they're doing is, they're outlaying the cash, and that seems all well and good. But then we have displacement of people that can no longer afford to live there. Let's look at the West Coast, where that is happening, and the homelessness is getting vast and almost unmanageable. So again, we're trading one environmental solution for streets that have to be medevac cleaned on a daily basis. So again, what are we really accomplishing? I think that we can think out of the box and find solutions if we put a team of excellence to that task. We may not have all the answers, but I think we know where to look to get them, and I don't see anyone that's solving those problems collectively in Washington. That's the mindset and the solution-oriented skill that I want to bring to the table.
My last question on that topic is, so what do you think America's role should be in, should they be in or out of Paris climate agreement?
Well, I think at least for now we should be out, and the reason is I don't see there being any fairness to the equation. I don't see there being the logic applied of what we just discussed. Let's make sure that the data that we're looking at is sound. Let's look at differing opinions and then come to a conclusion. I think for now, as long as the United States was expected to bring more to the table, suffer more of the burden, but have have a solution that doesn't work for the United States, I don't think that that's going to work. Why not go back to the drawing board? We're open to discussion, but as for right now, I think we should be out.
Okay. Now let's switch gears a little bit. What's your take on the LGBT stuff? Are you?
Well, the stuff, like,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of stuff.
I didn't want to get too much into a lot of topics because we don't have a lot of time.
So wow, we saved the biggest chunk for the last one. All right, so there's a lot to unpack there. But in general, look, if you're talking about curriculum in the schools, I just spoke at the.
That was my next question.
All right. Well, I just gave my testimony at the Board of Education, and the bottom line is that we have something still in this country called the Constitution, and within that Constitution is the First Amendment. That what the first part of the First Amendment is, it's freedom of religion. Now, a lot of people like to interpret that as freedom from religion, but it's actually freedom of religion, and that means that everyone has the right to practice their religion as they see fit, according to their own conscience, and to teach their children that. That is very, very simple. And I was encouraged that when I testified at the Board of Election, there were a number of different faiths represented, but they all had one bottom line common denominator, is that they wanted to make those decisions for their own children, and they have that constitutional right. So, everyone in this country has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All adults can live their lives the way they see fit according to their conscience. But when it comes to someone that objects to material that's being taught to their children, they're protected in that Constitution too. That's the balance that I'm looking for.
Do you think it's happening in other states too? Or I think Governor Phil Murphy introduced this as a pilot project in some school districts, I think.
He did, and California already has this more fully implemented than New Jersey does. And I will tell you that if they're a harbinger of what's to come in New Jersey, I mean, there are some of the material that was presented at the Board of Election hearing that came from California had to be covered. It could not even be shown on camera. So, this is something that we have to think long and hard about. And it's, again, I pivot back to the Constitution. I'm a true constitutional conservative, and that's good news. Whether you're a liberal, whether you're a Republican, Democrat, you may not always agree with me, but you will always know where I stand, and I'll always pivot back to that Constitution. That's a protection for all of us, and that's what you have assured with a vote for me.
Another popular topic is about abortion.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on that?
Yeah, I've never made it a secret. I am staunchly pro-life. I am a mother of 3. I talk openly how I'm actually a mother of 6. I had 3 miscarriages. I have 3 little, I call them angel babies, and I fought for those babies with my own life. I actually had a physician tell me that I had to have a procedure to save my own life 3 times, and each time I said, no, that this is God's life, and I stand proudly and firmly for the rights of that unborn child. Again, I go to the Constitution. Constitution protects life and liberty for all, and that includes the unborn in their mother's womb. And I'll never not fight for that.
Okay, my last question: what makes Tricia best suitable candidate for this job?
And that's a good. I did not undertake this journey without doing a lot of soul searching and a lot of understanding of what's going to be required and what we have to accomplish. I can tell you firmly that I am in this with all of my heart and soul. I am in this for my country, the country that I love, the country that I was raised to believe faith, family, flag, and I am in this to accomplish America's agenda and to make sure that our Constitution is preserved for every American citizen, so help me God.
Well, Tricia, from our TV5 studios, Mana TV and entire network, I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. That's all we have for this week. Until next week, take care. We'll come up with another topic, with another guest in my show, Straight Talk. Thank you very much. God bless America.